That is the recompense of the enemies of Allah. The fire! For them therein is the home of eternity as recompense for what they, of our verses, were rejecting. That's Quran 41:28. It's spooky stuff. I sure hope that some top-tier Muslim apologist calls in today to convert me. Well, here's their chance, because the Atheist Experience is starting right now. Hey, everybody. It's Atheist Experience today on May 28th, 2023, except it's not. It's June 4th. And I'm living in the past, but I'm going to move us into the future. I'm Johnny P. Angel, and I'm here today with Armin Navabi. Armin, how are you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. This is a dream come true, to be honest.
Well,
on Atheist Experience.
Well, I'm glad. We're so glad to have you. I'm glad to be here with you. And I really hope that joining us today was what I said in the stinger intro, some really powerful defenders of the faith. I want them to come in here with their best arguments, not their, riding horses to the moon and stuff. I want good stuff. And I want you to have a really deep conversation so we can all sit back and watch and learn. Generally speaking, the Atheist Experience is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government, whatever religion that might be. We have a question of the week last week, and it happened to have been about me. Last week, we at the ACA asked you, what did the caller say to make Johnny look like that? And here are our top three answers. Dayoth. Johnny, show us your best impression of the Phantom of the Opera. So this, if I'm falling asleep, yes, maybe. Number 2, Aid Bailey says, Johnny P. facepalm, it takes more faith to be an atheist. That's pretty close. That, or look at the trees, or where do you get your morals from, or you just want to sin, or something about enzymes. That'll do it to me every time. But King Nick 1994, good year, said, the caller said, Sauron isn't the best Tolkien character. Well, he's not. It's Anatar, Lord of Gifts. We covered this a couple weeks ago. Anyway, we have a new question for this week. And you're going to be the first person to answer it, Armin. The question is, what is the best verse, Villains Edition, from any holy text? So I think you have one ready for us. What is that?
Yeah, I do have one ready, and you have to bear with me because it requires a little bit of an explanation. I have this verse. The reason why I picked this verse, because I believe most Muslims, just like most people, are good people, right? Mm-hmm. And that is why, just like so many Christians, when they find out what the Bible tells them about, I don't know, slavery, about women, about different things, they realize that, yeah, I can't sign off to this, right? I cannot accept this. This is not moral. This is inhuman, right? Mm-hmm. I believe most Muslims, when they truly understand what Islam and the Quran represent, they cannot remain Muslim. And I have had a lot of success with convincing Muslims to leave Islam by just demonstrating Quranic verses and hadith. And this one has been the most successful verse in the Quran when it comes to convincing Muslims to leave Islam. And that's why I want to introduce it to you, because it is truly an evil verse. And I want to introduce it to people so they could also use it as a weapon to get people to leave Islam. So okay. I will read it. This is Quran chapter 4, verse 24. And you only need the beginning part of this verse, and I will also read the explanation, the tafsir, the commentary on the verse as well, right? So the verse starts like this. It says, and also prohibited to you are all married women. That's so far, so good. Like, obviously, an Abrahamic religion is telling you that you cannot have sex with women who are not married. I mean, it's expected from an Abrahamic religion to say that, right? And then it said, except. And I remember when I was in Iran as a Muslim, when I read this verse, when it's got to accept, I was like, what the hell? The Quran is telling me that it is allowed to have sex with certain married women. And like, who could these married women be? Like, it's saying that prohibited to me are for sex women who I cannot have sex with are married women, except who are these women that I can have sex with, even though they're married? It says, except those who your right hand possesses. Your right hands possesses. And if you look at the footnote, it says the people who your right hands possesses means slaves or war captives.
Oh.
So basically what it's telling you that if you capture a woman in war, you could have sex with her even though she is married. And should I read the commentary on this? Because a lot of people say, no, Armin, you're misrepresenting the verse. This is you should actually go read the tafsir and this hadith surrounding it. And this is just your own interpretation. And I'm like, okay, I have the tafsir. I have the tafsir that is also referring to a sahih hadith, meaning an authentic hadith for the interpretation. And I will read that to you. Okay, so here's the commentary, the tafsir on the verse. It says, Allah said, also forbidden are women already married, except those whom your right hand possesses. The ayah, means the verse, means you are prohibited from marrying women who are already married, except those whom you acquire through war. For you are allowed such women after making sure they are not pregnant. Imam Ahmad recorded that Abu Sa'id al-Khudri said, this is a sahih hadith. So basically, this is giving you the context where this verse was revealed to Muhammad. The context says, we captured some women from the area of Athas, who basically during war, who were already married. And we disliked having sexual relations with them because they already had husbands. So we asked the Prophet about this matter, and this ayah, this verse, was revealed. And this is the Prophet, so also forbidden. So it reads the ayah, and then Prophet Muhammad said, consequently, we had sexual relationships with these women. This is the wording collected by the person who mentions that. So basically, they're saying that even the Muslims at that time that were at war, they were like, maybe we shouldn't, they captured some women. They were slaves, basically. They were captives. And even the woman, the Muslims at that time were like, maybe these women have husbands, so maybe we shouldn't have sex with them. And then the Prophet basically revealed that verse to them and no, it's okay, go ahead. And that's why this is basically sex slavery. This is the Quranic verse endorsing sex slavery.
Yuck. Yeah, that's a villain level quote. That's a pretty good one. Good as in terrible. But the folks who watch this show are more familiar with the nastiest portions of the Bible, Old Testament and New, but there's some pretty awful parts of the Quran. Thanks for that one, folks.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, sorry for nothing. Folks out there, if you've got something that can compare with that, give it to us. We want to read it. We will read it on next week's show. We will reveal our top 3. But with that said, I'm going to take our first call. First call is going to be coming from James. He's coming out of California. And James says, the verse about a man laying with another man, Leviticus 20:13, is a correct verse. Not the death part. Well, just in time for Pride Month. But homosexuality is still immoral. James, you're on AXP with Armin and Johnny. Tell us more about your thoughts on this, please.
Oh, well, I was just looking at it gives us those guidelines is because it brings harm to us and to society.
Okay.
So I think it would be a much better place for us to live if it was just one man, one woman, they were married, they had children because they wanted to, we weren't spreading sexual diseases and doing harmful things to people as far as rape and incest. And
is it your opinion, James? Is it your opinion, James? I'm talking over you right now. That homosexual people are the people who are primarily spreading the diseases and who are committing sexual assaults on people.
No. What I'm saying is that it is
That's
harmful,
good.
even though we don't see the harm. We don't see as much harm as God does. So we don't see it as harmful as it is to ourselves and to society.
What is the harm? What is the harm? Tell me about the harm that you see in homosexuality, because I can tell you,
well,
I don't see it.
It's a natural act to have anal intercourse.
Oh boy.
Anal sex. Do you see it as a
That
natural
was not the question. The question was, what's the harm?
part of the body was used? Well, that's harmful to that part of the body. It's harmful.
James, did you try it and it didn't feel good, or what's the harm?
No.
Because there's lots of different ways that people of the same sex can be in relationships with each other, and can show each other physical affection and erotic pleasure, and it doesn't only come in the form of anal sex. So what about that is harmful? Good. What about that is harmful?
What's harmful?
Are you talking about anal tearing? When, let's say, two people decide to have anal sex and they don't lubricate properly and they don't prepare themselves, are you talking about that kind of harm? Because although there are some people who have a kink about the harm, I believe that there are ways of getting around that. I've read in books.
Let's just isolate. James, let's isolate all the. Let's think about like two men who love each other, all right, who are not even into anal sex, like they're like oral sex. Okay, they love each other, they have a long-term committed relationship with each other, they support each other, and they're getting pleasure both emotionally and sexually from being each other, and they don't participate in anal sex. Can you find any harm in this relationship? What's the harm in this relationship?
Well, that's it's more clearer than we. So it is harmful to us in society. We don't see the harm that it brings as God does. God sees way more clearer than we do. We don't see it clear.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, but if we don't see it, okay, for us as atheists, we don't believe in God and we don't see the harm. Why should we stop? Like, why should we not? Why should we condemn this if we don't see the harm?
Well,
because based on that line of reasoning, we should ban everything because everything could be harmful and we don't see the harm. We should see the harm before we condemn something.
Guidelines,
right?
Well, there's guidelines for us through even laws that we make. Right, we have guidelines that protect people, protect us, protect the environment, and all of those things. Right?
Where do you get these guidelines?
Well, we see harm in that things bring, right? And so we try to stop that harm from happening, right?
So you're talking about environmental harm, like pollution, for example, right?
Well, everything that's harmful.
Well, let's get specific. Let's get specific.
Right?
James. Let's get specific. And it's interesting that you chose environmental harm, but why not? So you've got Company A and Stream B. And Company A is manufacturing something that they're making a profit off of. Very good. They're properly licensed and all that jazz. And then they decide to dump some sort of toxic chemical that is bad for the environment, for the human environment and for the animal environment. But let's focus on the human environment. And people get sick. And so we make that behavior illegal, or we heavily regulate it, or we heavily, in ways we limit the amount that a company can put into a river, right? Okay, so there's the harm, right? We've agreed that this side effect is deleterious for the people living downstream. And so there's the harm. So now I want to hear what that kind of harm is. Don't tell me God knows what it is, but I don't. What is the harm for homosexual behaviors?
Because we don't see the harm that God does. That's the answer. The answer is that there's guidelines for us because we don't see how harmful it is to us. That's why He gives us those guidelines.
Okay, then what if I introduce to you another entity that you don't believe in, and I tell you that that entity sees harm in, I don't know, drinking water, right? And then
Well,
you say, well, there's
because
no harm in drinking
the
water.
reason
I'm
I
like, well,
wouldn't-
my entity that you don't believe in can see
Yes.
all this harm, and you don't. Are you
Yeah.
going to
the
accept
reason I
my
wouldn't. This is,
claim?
no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't agree with it because I know that there's only one God, one truth, and one word is our God. I know that.
Cool.
So I wouldn't agree with anything else. So
Well, you know it, so it'd be
That's
helpful
the
then if you could then explain
well, would you?
how you know it
Okay, go ahead.
and why we should know it too.
All right, I know it because it's that wrote about it. Witnesses are credible. They're very credible.
Really quick, James, are you on Bluetooth right now, or are you on your regular phone?
Oh, I'm on my phone.
Okay, you're cutting in and out. But
So
somebody got a roadmap.
well,
Please
okay,
repeat
so-
it. I missed that.
all right. So the reason I believe is because I believe the witnesses that were there and saw everything happen and wrote it down. And I believe that those witnesses are real people, such as Paul, the apostle. He was a real guy. He wrote real letters to other cities, which are some of the books of the Bible, Colossians, Ephesians, Galatians. Those are letters that he wrote to other people who also believed, and they were also witnesses. So they accepted those letters as truth, and they lived by those things that he wrote. So that's why I believe, because this isn't just some made-up story.
But who? But James, who claimed that those witnesses were there? There was one person that claimed all those witnesses are there. I could claim. So for the entity that I introduced to you, okay, I could make a claim that there were also.
They wrote their own letters because they wrote their own letters and claimed that they were there too. Okay, not just Paul, but all the other witnesses also wrote down their own letters. So Paul wrote.
But all those
other witnesses.
But Paul mentioned like hundreds of witnesses, and the other people also. First of all, a lot of those letters are not written by the people who you claim they were written by. But again, it's easy to make stuff up. It's easy to say there were hundreds of witnesses. It's easy to say that.
Well, no, I'm not saying that though. I'm not saying that they made up that there was hundreds of witnesses, or that just because he wrote that.
I know you're not. I know you're saying that, but can you see how easy it is to make that up? I could say that there was an event happened, and you don't have access to the witnesses yourself. I could just say that there were hundreds of witnesses. Can I not just make that claim? Isn't it not easy to make that claim?
Yes, you could do that. But the reason that we know the witnesses are real is because they were established in other cities. They went to other cities and established churches because they knew the truth. They were willing to die for it.
No. Not the hundreds of witnesses. Only a few people were making these claims. You don't have access to the hundreds of witnesses. You don't have the access to those hundreds of witnesses were not writing anything. Only a few people, a handful of people, claimed that there were hundreds of witnesses. You don't actually have direct access to those witnesses.
Okay, that's fine. You can say that, but what I'm getting at, and what my point.
But you're just gonna disregard that point. You can say that, and what's your response to that? What is your response? How can't that be the case?
Because of the established witnesses that did receive the letters, accept those letters as true, and establish the church when it began. It would have fallen to the ground and become nothing, like all of the other things did back in that day, especially the claim of resurrection. They didn't believe in the resurrection. That was a new thing that Paul brought, and what he did was he used the old writings that were 2,000 years old at the time, before they were even alive, and he used those writings as his argument. He said, look at this. You guys, your people, the Jewish people from thousands of years ago, this happened, that happened, and this happened. He used all of those old writings.
James, we have hundreds of witnesses. James, we have hundreds of so-called witnesses that are alive today that claim that they have seen the Mahdi in Islam. They've seen the Mahdi with their own eyes, and you have access to them. These people are alive. Are all these witnesses proof of the fact that Islam is true and the Mahdi is like living among us right now?
Are they in different cities,
No,
Armin?
that's not proof. That's not
Yeah,
true.
they're in.
So what you
They're
do
in
is you take a
no,
comic,
that is true.
They're in different cities, James.
No.
Does-
What you
They're
do
in
is
different
you take the
countries.
combination. You take the combination of all of the writings that were written down for thousands of years and all of the things that happened to the Jewish people, their history that was written down,
Okay,
and you
Armin.
combine that with the writings of Paul and the witnesses at the time of Jesus, and of the historians that weren't Christians who wrote down what happened at that time.
Oof, this is very dense, Armin. You
com-
combine these things, and it all.
Let me finish. You combine all that together,
Mhm,
and you look at the
mhm.
prophecies, you look at the
And
history, you look at what happened, you look at
whole
what
lot of
said, as far as what was
get a
written.
whole lot
take all
of
that combined
nothing.
together. Hold on. When you put it all,
You know what happens, folks, when someone tells me to hold on? I mute them. So you take ancient writings of ancient people talking about stuff that they legend type of stories, floods and plagues and miraculous behaviors, angels, demons, and these kind of things, journeys of people, and quasi-historical figures. And then we through the course of the history of the Jewish people, they write this down, they form rituals around it, they make it a central core of their cultural identity, and they stratify society according to that writing. And then it gets codified in an oral and a written tradition, and a priestly class looks after it. And then those writings become available, because they're printed, to people thousands of years later who can't verify that any of those things happened, merely that those things were written down. And so those people become smitten, if I may use the word, with an itinerant preacher wandering the countryside in Judea and preaching, let's be honest, not particularly unique things for the time. And when that person dies, very well could be because of crucifixion, because he was disrupting things, somebody starts writing tales with him as the center of the tales. And they're writing it with fulfillment of so-called prophecy in mind. These stories are unsigned stories. No individuals are identified except for Paul, who wasn't there for any of it. He heard stories from people. So you got a game of biblical telephone. Got it. So now I'm putting you back off mute, and now you probably got a lot of things to say. So go ahead. What do you got?
Yeah, so it wasn't biblical telephone. So
how do you know it wasn't biblical telephone?
There.
Tell me how you know it was a biblical telephone, because I'll be honest with you, James, I do appreciate your call, and I'm going to keep you on here for a bit, but you're kind of doing like an inch deep, a mile wide. We're going to have to get into something specific, because you've got a lot of sort of entry level physical defense, and you're not allowing. I'm going to go ahead and mute you again really quick, because you're talking over me, and I don't like it. And I want to stop talking, because I want to have a conversation between me and you and Armin. Okay, so it's going to be a back and forth. So when we're going to wait for breaks, and we're going to address something, but we're not going to let you just run roughshod over the fields of conversation. Okay, we're going to plow fields, right? Then we're going to plant seeds of conversation, and then we're going to water them with dialectic. All right, and then we're going to give it some time to think, and then we will harvest the agricultural byproduct or product of good conversation. Okay, so here you are, James. You are off of mute. So pick one specific thing, and don't give me, in totality, if you add all these bad pieces of evidence up, it turns into one piece of good evidence. Give me one, and we'll talk about the one, and then we'll go move on to the next one. Okay? Thanks, James. Okay. So you were saying. Okay.
Yeah, well, let's just talk about Paul then, because Paul, historians agree that Paul was a real guy. Do you agree?
Okay.
That historians agree that Paul was real?
I don't know.
Yes.
Let's, for the
Yeah,
sake of conversation, let's say
So-
Paul is as real as I am.
Most of them. Yeah, most of them.
All right. So what do you? Well, okay. So what do you do with Paul then? Was Paul a crazy lunatic, or was he an established person in society who was wealthy, not super wealthy, but he was brought up in a established wealthy home, who was taught.
That's a false
who was
dichotomy.
False
educated.
dichotomy.
He could have been both. They could have been both.
He could also have just been
He was
mistaken.
educated.
Just been mistaken, James,
Educated.
right? Are people who are established in society with good money, are they always right, or do they sometimes make terrible mistakes?
No, but he was educated in the Torah, in the law of God, right? That's the writings of Moses. So he was taught all of that.
James, the
He grew up
environment that he lived
powerful.
in, educated people had delusions. It was common for educated people back then to have delusions. Okay, everybody back then believed in the end of stuff like the end of times and prophets and revelation. Educated people, it was common for educated people back then to have these delusions as well. It's not rare for educated people to believe in these things, especially back then.
So your conclusion of Paul is that he was delusional. That's your conclusion.
No, James. No, James. You're
What's your
what you're trying to do, James. I'm talking.
I'm asking.
No. Okay, you're asking. No. My conclusion is not that he's delusional, and I can't speak for Armin. My conclusion is that if Paul existed, right, he had an opinion about the risen Christ figure, right? We can't verify what Paul actually experienced on the road to Damascus. Okay, we can't verify any of that. All we know is he wrote it down and started writing letters to people, all right? And those other people had their connections to perhaps people who had connections to Jesus if he were a historical figure. Let's assume he was for the sake of conversation, right? You can be a lunatic, you can be right, you can be mistaken, right? And honestly, I'm not going to say he was crazy. I think he was mistaken. There's a lot of powerful people who have some very, I would say, incorrect opinions about people, right? And the world around them. So, yeah, that.
Well, I would say that he might have been somewhat delusional if he was what he wrote. He really believed it. He believed that Jesus came to him when he fell off his horse, right? So if he was being sincere about what he saw, I mean, that could be a delusion, but he could have been he could be really sincere and believed in what he saw, but he might have just seen something that was not really there. I mean, that happens often.
Yeah. James, real quick. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and this friend of mine, I don't believe in psychic stuff. Okay, I don't believe in psychic stuff. And this friend was telling me, and neither does this friend, by the way. This friend had something having to do with a neurological disease. A person in their family had a neurological disease, and they were going through some family member who had some issue. Okay, and they were having a conversation months later with another friend they hadn't seen for a long time, hadn't had any contact with for a long time. Okay. And they were not talking about the subject of neurological disease. Okay. And the friend out of nowhere said, I can recommend something like, I can recommend a neurologist if you're interested, or something to that effect. It was a out of nowhere conversation, suddenly talking about neurology. Okay. And it just so happened that friend had a family member who was going through the same thing. They hadn't talked about it at all, and they hadn't seen it on social media, maybe. So does that person have psychic powers? Was it God intervening? Or do you just not know? Sometimes stuff happens.
Yeah, it could have been anything.
Could have been anything. Could have been
natural.
Yeah, you just don't have enough information, and sometimes you just got to say, "Gee, I don't have an explanation for that."
Comment on the other things you said. I would like to comment on the other things you guys said.
Please do. Please
do. Is that okay?
Please do.
Can I have a little bit of time? Okay,
so
Paul put together several logical arguments based on what he experienced, what he knew of Christ. And he also spoke to two of the disciples. He was with them for a year or two.
Give us the
to
best one.
confirm
The
everything.
best one.
Best one.
Hold
From
on,
everything
hold on,
Paul
hold on.
said, what was the
This is
best
what
one?
I'm saying. This is what I'm saying.
I think
He
he's getting
put
there.
together several logical arguments
Okay.
Oh my
for Christ and for the resurrection, and that he was the Messiah based on all of the prophecies and the writings from the Old Testament. Now,
Oof.
in the Old Testament, and many of the Jews, many of the Jews still rejected Jesus because they didn't see clearly how he was going to come as the Messiah. They thought he was going to come as a king, a ruler, overtake the Romans.
James,
The
we
Jewish
need the
people would
argument.
establish
You're
that.
not giving us the argument.
argument.
You're
Just-
telling us a
This
story.
is the argument. This is
Okay,
the
so-
argument.
He fulfilled
Listen,
prophecy.
Give
That's
me
it.
give me a minute. You won't listen.
Give us a
you
minute,
have to
folks.
listen to the
Give us a minute.
The argument is this. This is the argument. The revelation that Paul had from the old writings and what happened when Christ came, and his arguments based on all of that put together was a revelation. It was new. It wasn't something that they knew about, that it was going to come and happen the way it happened. He had a revelation that came from God, and he wrote it down, and he's trying to explain to everyone, especially the Jewish people, that this is the Messiah.
How is that an argument?
Yeah, that's a bunch of
What do you mean,
claims.
how is that an argument? It's not a bunch of claims.
That's a claim that you're just repeating your claims. That's not an argument.
Is this James?
It is
Do
an
you think that this James? Do you think that this is convincing to anyone other than a person who already believes?
Yes, of course it would be. Of course.
Okay, so then because so I'm gonna have you speculate. Do you think that I'm so vested in my atheistic non-belief in supernatural stuff that I'm denying what I'm actually convinced by, which is your argument? Do you think? Because this is terrible.
No,
James. Okay,
No,
so
well,
what is it? Am I not smart enough? Because I'll accept that. I'll accept that.
no. This is what I'm saying. You
Okay.
you look at, let's say, for example, papers written by a scientist. You read those papers and you look at that and you think to yourself, you know what? That's logical. That makes sense. The conclusion that I'm coming to is the same thing he came to because it's a very logical argument.
Okay,
That
James,
makes sense.
I'm gonna have to
So I
pause you
think
right
that
there
is
because
true.
now I think you've shown your true hand. Somebody in the chat has suggested that we're running into Poe territory, and I kind of think that we're there now because I don't think any reasonable, intelligent person, James, I'm including you in there, could honestly believe that reading 2,000-year-old texts claims of supernatural events is comparable to the writings of scientific experiments, because the differences, and I'm not a scientist, but we have some on staff, who will tell you that the reason why science actually makes progress and the reason why science is much more reliable is that you can go ahead, set up those experiments, and try the experiments yourself to see if you get the same outcome. And if you don't get the same outcome, that would tend to suggest that the scientific discovery is not as sure as it might seem. The reason why science is so reliable is because it's got a built-in system for checks and balances for rooting out false positives. And so the fact that you're saying that tells me that I think you're calling in trying to make really bad theist arguments. I might be wrong. I've been wrong before. And if I am wrong, then golly gee, call back when we've got a scientist on the show, and maybe somebody who's interested in having a prolonged conversation about biblical prophecy, because I'm not in the mood for it today. Armin, last thoughts.
Just add one thing. If the standards that James introduced to us, if they were acceptable standards for us to accept any claims, based on those standards, most religions would be true.
Yeah.
Like based on that level of barrier for us to accept a claim, then Islam would be true because I could give you better arguments for Islam, better examples for exactly what James said in Islam, in Hinduism, in Judaism. These are not really not a high bar to be able to pass. That this is why the scientific method is actually is a lot more rigorous. I think people, when they compare these things, this nonsense to the scientific method, maybe they don't understand how rigorous the scientific method is. Maybe like if they should study it a little bit more, because you don't have to be a scientist to be able to understand how tough passing those standards are. Just a little bit of understanding of the methodology will get you there.
Go talk to somebody who's working in a lab about the kind of work they're doing, and it's not Marvel Cinematic Universe level generalities. It's so specific, and it's relatively unintelligible to a layperson like myself. And that might just be because I'm not intelligent enough. But I'll tell you what, if you like what we do and you'd like to support us, here are some ways you can support the Atheist Experience and the atheist community of Austin. You can become a member for as little as 99 cents a month. Click the join button below. This will give you access to special chat emojis. And you can send a super chat with a question or a comment, which will be read live on air during the show. Armin, can you see the super chats in the little
yes,
chat?
I can.
Could you please read us our first one?
Okay. What is this? Okay, so I listened to the 21st of May show with Mike and Secularity. Oh yeah, so he's dancing down there. The explanation of ought versus is made everything very clear. Thank you all. So that was a $10 super chat from Chuck Villa. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you so much, Chuck. Yeah, that was I've heard tell that was a really good show. You should go back and check it out. We've got Secularity in the background right here. Much love to you. Yeah, that's right. I want to go back to the first one, and we got Siggy Sigwald, a new member, gifted 50 the Atheist Experience memberships. I don't know what that means, but
that means that 50 people in the live chat just became members. That's a lot of membership. That's a lot. I've never seen somebody buy 50 memberships for other people. You can gift it now to other people. So
much love to you, Siggy, and I hope that the people out there are grateful to you. We're grateful for your donating 666 Argentine pesos. And the question you have is, anyone know why Johnny P drinks mate? Because it's delicious. That's why. Wakes me up. Sorry,
I didn't see the ones above. Do you want me to do the
please do. Please do.
Yeah. So we got another $10 one, $9.99 from Greg. Oh my God, I should have let you take this one. Greg Markowski?
It's Greg Markowski. It's Greg Markowski.
I don't know how to. Sorry, I'm bad at this.
I got you back. Don't worry about it.
And he's saying thanks. He or she is saying thanks for the show. Well, thank you, Greg. Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Is there anything?
I think we've gotten through all of them. That's what we have for now. But let's go. Let's go take another call. Let me see here. I'm going to take a call from Xavier, not Javier. Xavier. Xavier is a guy coming out of Florida who's asking, who are you to deny Muhammad and Paul's experience, but accept transgender experiences and identities? Oh boy. Happy Pride Month, folks. Who am I? Well, I've covered this. There's even a clip of me ranting about it. But Xavier, how you doing? Happy Pride Month. How you doing?
Hello, happy Pride Month.
Happy Pride Month. Who am I to deny it? Well, I don't deny any of that stuff. But I don't believe that what Muhammad and Paul experienced was supernatural. First of all, I'm not entirely sure that Muhammad really existed. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure that Paul existed, but assuming that they were, I believe that if they existed and they were the people who are responsible for the writings that are ascribed to them, and it's honest, there's a lot of assumptions here, that they perceived something. They had let me take it back, perceived. They had a phenomenon. They had a mental moment where they experienced something, all right? And they said that was supernatural, had a supernatural origin, and that therefore the supernatural exists, and it exists in a certain way. Okay, that's that. They're making a claim about the outside universe, okay? About the nature of metaphysics and physics and reality and all that stuff, making an affirmative claim. A transgender person is not claiming to have a certain sex reality. They're claiming to have a certain internal gender reality, okay? They're not saying that they were born with certain gametes coming out of them, that they have certain chromosomes coming out of them. They are saying that this is their identity, that gender, the construct of gender, gals have long hair, and guys have short hair, and gals are feminine, protecting type of people, or whatever the gender roles might be, whatever it is. And it's not for me to say, but whatever those roles are, whatever those categories of qualities that belong to the category of masculine and those that belong to feminine, that these folks don't, it doesn't resonate with them. It seems unnatural. It's a reporting of an internal state. Okay? And just like Katie Montgomery has said, it's like left-handedness, right? When someone says that they are transgender, or that they're left-handed, or that coffee cake tastes good to them, better yet, coffee. I hate coffee. Prove that I hate coffee. Prove that I can't stand the taste of coffee. Why the hell do you think I drink this stuff? Because I don't like coffee and I got to wake up. Okay? So when a person reports to you that they have a certain internal state, right? I'm not making a claim about the source of the internal state or whatever it might be, but it's authentic. And so we just believe them. Long answer, Xavier. What are thy responses to that?
I had some points too, but
I would say, does Armani want to talk?
Uh-oh.
No, can I just quickly just mention something? If Muhammad and Paul, I met them and they said that, and a trans person, they all say that this is their experience. It's easy for me to believe all three of them that they had that experience. Okay, if Muhammad said I had this met Muhammad and he told me that I had this experience that God talked to me, it's easy for me to believe that he had that experience. The difficult part is whether that experience reflects, an Allah that really exists. People experience revelations all the time. That is not the heart. That is not the extraordinary claim that, so the existence of those experiences, I'm fully willing to admit that, those, or if I met Paul and he said, look, I actually saw Jesus, it's easy for me to accept that he had that experience. He saw something, he felt something, where what he saw reflects an objective reality outside of his mind. That is the hard part that I need more evidence than his claim to believe in.
Yeah, and Xavier, sorry for suggesting that you were complaining. I'm just so used to it with some of our callers. You're a better caller. Xavier, Armin makes a good point. What about you? What's your responses to those things? I want to hear from you.
Yeah, it seems like I don't want to invalidate any transgender's experience. I'm not like that at all. I just want to say that up front. And I'm glad for Pride Month and them being valued as people and all of that. So, but my point is that you're asking for evidence from religious people, but you don't ask for evidence of transgender people. So I think it's a double standard against religious people. And so I just
no. I don't ask for evidence. Again, I don't ask for evidence for the experience. Okay. Again, if a religious person says that I heard God talk to me, I believe them. I don't ask for the experience. I don't ask for evidence for that experience. The evidence part comes from whether what they heard is actually from a God. because people have those experiences. We know people. We have actual evidence for people having those experiences. We have evidence for people hearing things. We have evidence for people have religious, spiritual experiences. So we know actually, not only don't deny them, we actually have evidence that people have those experiences. So
If I may,
we validate. Yeah.
If I may put a fine point on this, okay, and I think what Armin is saying, and just to back up, because I think what you said, maybe I didn't understand. We agree. We don't deny that religious people, like you said, had experienced something. But you said, what you said, Armin, the reason why I interrupted is like that they heard from God, or they had a message from God. We would contest that. We wouldn't contest that they had an experience of receiving a message from God, but we don't believe that it was a message. We don't believe that it was a God. We believe that they had the experience of a message from God, or whatever it might be. So that's the difference. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to speak for you, Armin. Please, sorry.
No. That's, you said it better than I said. So we don't invalidate the experiences. We just don't believe what those experiences represent.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me take those words. You don't believe what those experiences represent, but when religious people do that with someone claiming that they don't have any gender, you call them transphobes. So what makes atheists? So aren't atheists bigots when they do the same thing to religious people? I don't want bigotry.
No, because gender is an experience, right? So, for example, if somebody says, "I am somebody who experienced God talking to me," we will like, okay, but I don't know if it's actually God. We will completely accept it, you know. So, but when it comes to identity, so gender, unlike sex, is an identity, and identities are nothing but experiences. So they're not. When they say my gender is like man or woman, they're referring to their experiences. So they're not making any claims beyond what they're experiencing, because that's what our identities are.
Yeah.
If my identity as like Armin or a man or a brother or a husband, these are just my feelings, my experiences. So given that it's nothing but experiences, it's not, we don't need anything beyond their experiences to believe them.
Xavier, can we take something that's less politically charged and maybe explore that? Because I think it's related. And I mentioned it before. I don't like coffee. You're taking my word that I don't like coffee, right? Do you believe me when I say that coffee tastes disgusting to me?
I believe you.
All right, cool. What evidence am I presenting to you that I believe coffee is disgusting to me?
There's no evidence.
There's no evidence. Well, there's my testimony, right? That I believe that coffee is disgusting to me, right? I think you're kind of accepting it solely upon my testimony, right?
Yeah, but I'm not calling you delusional. Religious people get called delusional for believing, for putting words and symbols to their experiences through religion. They get called delusional. They get called all sorts of things by atheists on this show. And I just
delusional doesn't need to be an insult. If tomorrow I wake up and I hear like the Mahdi or Allah or Jesus talking to me, my first conclusion would be like, okay, I am being delusional. That's not an insult. That would be the most, people sometimes have delusions.
Yeah, we know that people have hallucinations, but I think a lot of people, and I can only speak from my experience, that a lot of people who are religious grew up religiously and were told certain facts about the universe, that God exists, that God will judge you, that these are the rules you have to follow. They go to church regularly, or temple or mosque or whatever regularly. It's a part of their life, and they kind of just are on autopilot. A lot of people are on autopilot and they don't question it. I don't think that those people are delusional. I would suggest that those people haven't necessarily questioned the nature of the reality around them. Now, I could be wrong. That's just a hunch. But to the extent that there are atheists on this show and in the world and in the chat, in the comments, who would say that theism is a mental illness, I would say shut the hell up, because it's not. I think you're satisfied for insufficient reasons that a supernatural realm exists. That's as far as I would go, because I see the same evidence and I'm not convinced. That's it.
Yeah, Johnny, to be clear, like I'm not talking about general religious people. I'm speaking about specifically people who are hearing voices. Okay.
Okay.
And not most people, most religious people are not hearing voices, but because our caller is specifically referring to people who had that experience, and they're telling us they had that experience. We don't say all religious people are delusional, but those people might be having delusions. Okay, and that's okay. That's not like having delusions. We don't want to demonize people who are having mental issues. It's not an insult. Like it's actually, it might just be something that is happening. They might be hearing voices, which is fine. And it's also better if they recognize it. Like if I admire somebody who's having delusions and is recognizing that these are delusions because there's no evidence for what they're hearing. So that's actually a source of admiration for somebody if they recognize that they're being. It's not an insult. A delusional should not be used as an insult, because mental health should not be used as an insult.
Yeah, and to your point, Xavier, I appreciate that you are not one of these haters that are out there. Even amongst the atheists, there's plenty of haters, and I know because I read the comments, and I'm saddened by what I see. But do you see how there's a difference? Do you see how we're making a distinction between a person's internal state that only they can report, at least at this point in science, right? We can't tap into the brain and see things. I guess we could look at hormone levels or whatever. I don't know. But there's a difference between the internal state of a person's experience, the cause of that experience, and then a statement about external reality outside of them. That's where we're drawing that line. Because I guess you could always say that transgender people are just lying to us, that they know that they're not really transgender. But then you're starting to get into some problems, I think.
Right. I'm trying to see the distinction. And with those three little criteria, that clarifies a lot. I would just say that religion is part of people's identity. And you say, and so many skeptics demand evidence, or else they assume that there's no evidence, so there's no reason I should believe you unless there's evidence. But religion is part of their identity.
We will accept their identity.
Part of who they are.
We will believe their identity. We will also believe their identity. Right. So if somebody says these are my beliefs and that I'm a Muslim and that's my identity, I'm not going to invalidate that. I'm going to be like, yeah, I believe you. You are a Muslim. I will call you a Muslim if you want me to.
Yeah, but we just don't believe. We just don't believe that it's true. That the claims of that religion is true. That's all.
So to your point, if we wanted to be like if we wanted to be like transphobic people, right? If somebody says I'm a man and we're like, no, you're not. You're a woman. So the equivalent to that would be somebody coming to me as an atheist and say, I'm a Muslim. Okay. And I say, no, you're not. You're not a Muslim.
Yeah.
That would be the equivalent. That would be the comparison.
Yeah. You don't hold a belief in the reality of Allah. No, you don't.
And we don't do that. We accept them. We're like, you're Muslim.
Yeah. Okay. People say, oh, your beliefs are false. There's no evidence. But if we said that about transgender people, we will be considered transphobic because we're not believing them without evidence.
We also be wrong.
Yeah, no, here's the thing. Because do you understand what gender means? Okay, gender is about your experiences, right? So would you believe?
Right.
Okay, so okay, so if somebody told you that I feel as if I'm a man, okay, you don't require evidence for that because they're talking about their feelings. They're talking about their experiences. Okay.
Yeah.
So
we.
Okay. So Okay.
Oh,
okay, good.
Real quick. I'm going to interject. Javier, you're a man, right?
Xavier.
I'm a man too.
Yes.
All right. For what it's worth. Okay. What is it? What is maleness besides the physiological and the anatomical aspects of maleness that you possess? Culturally speaking, okay? Culturally speaking, what does it mean to you?
To me personally, is to play a certain role in the family, a certain role in society as a provider, as a protector, more testosterone, just a certain type of certain way of being and doing life as compared to the other half of the population. So that's what it means to me.
Okay, that's what it means to you. Now, ignoring the testosterone comment, okay, what if your your body were exactly the same? You had a penis, okay, and like, testes and all that jazz, vas deferens, and all that stuff. But, and I'm just taking your definition of maleness, okay, your definition. What if you were born as you were, but those qualities about the relationship and the family, the other side, what if that seemed like it didn't apply to you, like it did not, you weren't in harmony with that, you felt other than that? And it might be hard for you to envision that, because it's actually hard for me to envision what it'd be like to be different from me, but I know that people are, so I just kind of accept it. But what if you were different? What would you call yourself?
I would have to use a different gender.
Yeah.
If I felt different than that typical role. And I think religious people also kind of feel that way. They don't belong to this world. They feel like there's something other.
Okay. I think the difference...
We don't invalidate that.
Yeah. We don't invalidate the feeling. We just invalidate the dare I go down the J. Mike route, the ontological reality. We do not accept the ontological reality that they actually do belong to that other non-physical existence. We aren't convinced that it exists. But I have religious friends, and I could never tell them they don't believe something. Of course they believe it. Of course they identify themselves with that, right? We just aren't convinced that exists. So we believe that they are mistaken about that, or that there's insufficient reasons to believe that exists, or in some cases that some of the hosts would say, well, you're just wrong, right? But I'm not one of those people, because I don't know.
For another example would be like, imagine if somebody says that I identify as a woman because I feel like a woman. We're like, cool, you are a woman, we will address you like a woman. But if they say, like, let's say they were born with XY chromosome, and they said that because I identify as a woman, I'm going to claim that I was born with XX chromosomes and my chromosomes are XX. We were like, okay, no, because now you're making a claim about objective reality, which your claim does not match. Okay, first you were talking about your feelings and the way you identify, and that is completely, we don't ask for evidence because we just have to accept, we understand people's feeling based on what they're telling us. That's all we need. But now if you take that and make a claim about reality that doesn't match objective reality, then we will like, okay, we need evidence for that.
Yeah. All right, Xavier, I'm going to give you a last bit. Say your piece, but we've got to move on. I think we've gone around in a circle on this one. I want you to think about what we've said, and then maybe do some more thinking about it, and then call back later. I do like it when you call. So last thoughts on you, Xavier, because I trust you.
No, thanks for the clarification. Happy Pride Month to all of you. I just want to say, I hope if there was a religious month, that we would be just as tolerant as that as well. So on both sides. So blessings to you guys.
An interesting idea. Take care, Xavier.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Armin. Thoughts?
I do want to say that, no, I agree with that. One thing that we do is an Atheist Republic is that we support Muslim rights, Christian rights, Hindu rights, because as much as we are in disagreement with them about their belief, we also don't like them being mistreated. So part of our activism as atheist activists is to speak out when Muslims, for example, as much as we are anti-Islam, we're also pro-Muslim. So, for example, in China, when the government is oppressing Muslims, we speak out against that. In India, when Muslims are being oppressed, we speak out against that. In Bangladesh, when Hindus are being oppressed, we speak out against that. In Egypt, when Christians are being oppressed, we speak out against that. So, yeah, we are completely in agreement in the fact that we as atheist activists are also in support of the rights and support religious people and their rights and their freedoms.
That's the humanist bent on atheism, and not all atheists are humanists. But I know we were talking before the show about what's going on in Iran, and I know that you had some thoughts about that, Armin. You want to share?
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you so much for letting me do that, because it's surprising to me how so many atheists around the world don't know about this, because what's happening in Iran, and it's still happening, even though the media is not covering it as much, because the initial phases of it is like it's old news now. The revolution in Iran against the Islamic regime is still going on. It's still happening. It might have like died down a little bit, but it's still happening with civil disobedience and other ways people are fighting against the regime. And the reason why you as an atheist might care about this, and I hope like even if you're not an atheist activist, as a human, as a fellow human, you care about this, is because the situation in Iran is getting a lot worse. People are suffering under this regime. They're suffering, and things are getting very devastating. The Islamic regime is really bad at managing the economy and a lot of other things, and the economy is suffering. But another reason why atheists might want to pay attention to this is because what the revolution in Iran is and I don't say this lightly, I have evidence to back this up, is the largest secular movement in history. And it's the greatest mass exodus of people out of religion ever in history. We're talking, based on scientifically collected data that we have, we're talking about a country that has more than 85 million people. More than just under half the population has left religion, not Islam, not just Islam, religion as a whole. Like they left Islam and they're no longer Muslim and they're no longer religious at all. In one generation, in less than 40 years, this has never happened anywhere on the planet. In less than 40 years, a country with a population of more than 85 million people have been reporting leaving religion. Close to half the percentage. If I remember correctly, it was 47%. You will not find an example like this anywhere in history and any other country. And here's another thing. So Iran, based on this data, okay, from Gammon Institute, Iran is now a Muslim minority country. A Muslim minority country ruled by an Islamic theocracy. And also, the revolution itself has a lot of anti-religion and anti-Islamic elements. Even though I don't want to completely dismiss the fact that there's also a lot of Muslims involved in this religion, involved in this revolution against the religious authority, against the Islamic authority. And these religious people, these Muslims, want secularism. Even though they're the Muslims themselves, they're fighting for a secular democracy. So I don't want to dismiss the role of Muslims in this revolution, but there's also a major part of this revolution that is not just secular, not just atheistic, not just non-religious, but anti-religious. One of the main symbols of this revolution in Iran that is happening right now is the taking off and burning of the hijab. Right? We have had people who were executed, arrested by the government during the revolution and executed, and they became national heroes because right before they were executed, they told to people to not read the Quran for them and not pray for them when they die, and instead play happy music and be happy. That's Majid Reza Rahnavard, and now he's a national hero. We had a 9-year-old boy who was killed during the protest, who was killed by the government, and his mother during the burial ceremony came out and said with pride that my son Kian Pirfalak hated the Quran. And this is inside the Iran, and the thousands of people were in that crowd, and they all cheered. People don't believe that this is happening in Iran. So I just want you to pay attention, because a lot of people are forgetting that this revolution is still happening in Iran. And as atheists and secular activists, they need your support. The atheist movement is a global movement, and I don't want people to just focus on their own country, because this movement would be a lot stronger if we ally with each other across borders. Sorry, I went for too long.
No, that's great. And that really is the truth, is that humanity has spent the last 10,000 years under the spell, you might say, of magical type of thinking. And we are slowly, I would suggest, waking up, or let's say this, we're asking for more. We're asking for more evidence. And I some thinker, I think, who was I reading? Was it James? William James? Henry James? Henry James? We don't have another 10,000 years of magical thinking in us. It wasn't James, but it's true. We're all in this together. People from other countries, women, men, non-binary people, transgender people. All of us are expecting more from the societies that we're living in, and at some point, there's going to be a tipping point. We're not there. Maybe in Iran, they're coming there. We're not here in the United States. But we need to show support for those people around the world who have it a lot harder than we do here in this country. But I'm gonna just let you know, we have a channel that hosts all of the shows in audio podcast form. Visit tiny.cc/AEN podcast, where you can listen to all the latest shows, AXP, Talk Heathen, Truth Wanted, Nonprofits, and others on one channel. And you can support us on Patreon at tiny.cc/Patreon. AXP. Sorry, crew, that was kind of fast. I want to move on to our next call, and I'm gonna pick Ahmad. It's a guy in Ohio. He wants to know, you don't believe Muhammad or Paul existed? Yeah, I don't have a belief that Muhammad or Paul existed. I don't know, even if they did exist, how much of what we claim to know about those individuals is true and how much of that is legend. And you could say maybe I'm underinformed, but it doesn't really matter to me if they existed. It matters if what they are saying is true. And I'm just not convinced that they're true. Doesn't seem to affect my life any. Doesn't inform my decision making. So that's my answer, Ahmad. Armin, what about you?
Well, I mean, there is actually very interesting because we get more and more academic papers coming out and casting doubt over the existence of Muhammad. All right. So this is very strange because for even us atheists for a very long time assumed that, well, even if Jesus, most of his story is fake. I mean, Jesus, the understanding and by secular biblical scholar is that the story is based on somebody, but the vast majority of the stories around him are made up. But we thought, look, Muhammad, at least he was real, and most of his story is probably real because it's also closer to us in time. But now we are understanding that no, actually, Muhammad's situation is even worse than Jesus. So based on what we know now, based on new research that is coming out from academia, it seems like Muhammad, there was a person that did something, but his name wasn't even Muhammad, and he didn't claim prophethood. And the vast majority of what we understand about Muhammad is completely made up by the Umayyad and Abbasid dynasty. And the only thing that all of these stories of Muhammad itself the name Muhammad was a adjective referring to Jesus. So it wasn't even the name of the Prophet of Islam. There was something else that from Jesus that they added as the name of this guy. But the only thing that we know about that guy, which is not even his name, is that there was somebody who united Arabs and some Jews to fight against the Byzantine and the Sassanid Empire. That's the only thing we know. He wasn't Muhammad, the guy that the Muhammad story is based upon, was not a Muslim. Just like Jesus was not a Christian, Christianity was something, it was invented way after Jesus. Muhammad was not a Muslim. Islam was invented more than around 200 years after the death of Muhammad. That's when Islam was invented by the Umayyad and Abbasid dynasty.
Okay, Armin, let's see what our caller has to say about that. You've given us a lot to think about.
Hey, Johnny. Hey, Armin. How you doing?
Good.
Hello?
Yep.
Yes. Well, the first thing is the existence of Muhammad or Jesus or any prophet is important. Yes, it is important to know if he exists or not is important or not. Yes, it is, because if he exists, then we can go to the next step of searching if that the text that we have in our hand belong to this person or not, and then we can discuss if it is good or bad or if it is true or not. But if we come to the conclusion that this person does not exist, so everything after that will not have any value. So
false, absolutely false, absolutely false, Ahmad, because Plato wrote dialogues about Socrates, conversations that Socrates had with leaders in the community, with people with opinions. Okay, Socrates may not have existed in the form that he existed. He may have never had those conversations. He could have been a teacher that taught different things. We don't really know exactly what Socrates said because he never wrote anything down, right? But what's in there is important because it allows us to sort of follow along in Plato's thought, right? The way he was thinking about metaphysics, about ethics, about politics, about all these other things. So there may still be value if the characters of Paul and the characters of Muhammad are just characters, right?
Yeah, there could be a value, but we cannot say that the Bible is a true text from God or the Quran is a true text from God if Muhammad does not exist or Jesus does not exist.
I agree.
Agree with me on that.
I agree. I agree with you on that.
As a Muslim, I differentiate all other human, a person who try to think. I differentiate between my religious belief and what things I can prove by science. So for me, as a Muslim, I believe in Muhammad, Jesus, Moses, Jacob. I believe in all this prophet because I'm a Muslim. But his history is different matter. History need an evidence to prove that this person exists as a person. So although I believe in Moses and on Jesus as a prophet, and I believe in his existence as a believer, but I cannot argue with you from the history point of view that this person exists because I don't have any evidence. So Armin said the existence of Muhammad come 200 years after the time that claimed that Muhammad exists.
That's not what I said. No, that's not what I said.
That's what you said?
Okay. No. I said like the stories that were the words and stories attributed to Muhammad. Okay. So those are from Sunnah and Sirah that the latest versions that we have, the only versions that we have available of is close to 200 years after the death of Muhammad. We have earlier evidence that shows that there was somebody that unite the Arabs, like much earlier evidence, right? That shows that there was a character, which we don't know what his name was, that managed to unite Arabs and lead certain armies against the Byzantine Empire, for example, right? So we know that person that is a lot closer to when Muhammad was living, the evidence for that. But what Muhammad said, what his teachings were, what he was preaching, those were a lot of stories and legends that were attributed to him much later. Just like Jesus, for example, we know that there was a guy that was crucified. Like that's the most likely explanation of what happened. We have earlier evidence for that, but a lot of the things attributed to him in the Bible were things that came a lot later.
We have 5 from the Ottoman is Quran written, and we still have them in different museums. One of them in Turkey. It's been written about 20 years or more or less than that after Muhammad is dead.
Quran.
The way that
the Quran.
Yeah,
the Quran. Yeah, I know. The Quran mentions Muhammad 4 times by name. Okay, it mentions Rasulullah many times, but it mentions Muhammad by name only 4 times. Okay, 3 of those 4 times, the word is used in a way that it could be anybody. It doesn't need to be the last prophet of God. The word Muhammad, the way that academics understand what it means right now, is the one who is praised. So the new way of understanding what this Muhammad means was an adjective that was attributed to Jesus, not Muhammad. So only one of the 4 mentions of Muhammad in the Quran is clearly to the last prophet, to the Khatam al-Anbiya, which is Muhammad. The other 3, and also that one verse that is mentioning Muhammad in that way. So the Quran itself was, unlike what Islam teaches, is not a revelation that it came all at once, or it pre-existed Muhammad in heaven on a golden temple or something like that. It's an organic thing that was being developed. Certain parts of it was being developed even before Muhammad was born, and it continued evolving during when they say Muhammad lived, and it continued evolving many years after Muhammad died, and we could see the evolution. So if you are saying that we have Quranic texts that dates close to the time of Muhammad, yeah, I agree with that, but that doesn't prove that Muhammad that you believe in existed. It just proves that these texts were being evolving by society at that time, and we could actually see the progress of how these texts was evolving and what was effective, what was being, what ideas were be coming in and out. Like, we actually could see the progress. So actually, if you look at the history of the Quran and how it was evolved, actually completely dismisses it as a revelation that Muhammad got from Allah. Even if you go, for example, into the Dome of the Rock in Qubat al-Sakhra in Jerusalem, you can see Quranic verses within inside the dome that differs from what you have in the Quran that you have in your hand today. So we could actually see the evolution, which completely dismisses the entire narrative of Islamic belief.
I'm sorry, but I have to tell you that everything you said about the origin of the Quran, you cannot back it up. You don't have any document about that. You don't have any evidence.
We do.
I studied the Arabic. No, let me explain. You said that the Quran was even start to exist before the birth of Muhammad. I don't know what is the evidence for that.
We have texts. We have many texts. We could see. Yeah. We have pre-Islamic texts that is an earlier version of what the Quran eventually ended up being.
Give me one example.
The Talmud, for example, there are certain parts of the Quran that is clearly copied from the Talmud. There are certain poetry within Arabia that, like, we could see traces of earlier Islamic, Quranic text that was, got into that point. We could even see certain poetry. So, for example, the surah which says "Iqra bismika allazi khalaq," that surah, you could see the exact copy of that story in Christian mythology, that with so much distance from Islamic that shows that they're not even copies of each other. That there was a third place that they both were copied from. So there's tons of examples. There's actually a lot of academic work that is being done on this, on the early history of Islam. That so. If you want to actually research this, I suggest not looking only at Islamic sources. Look at the new information that is coming up from academic sources that is not Islamic sources about this topic, because it's really mind-boggling. This is a new area of studies, and every year the information that is coming out is completely revolutionizing this early Islamic history, the field of early Islamic history.
Ahmad, I want to hear your response to that, and then I want to ask you a question after that. Okay?
Yeah. Okay. We have three kind of texts that we have in our hand today from this era. We have the old Arabic poem. We have the Quran. We have what the Muslims call it Hadith. The Hadith is the word of Muhammad in different occasions, teaching his follower. He did not claim that this is the word of God. He claimed this is his word. And if we compare those three texts, they are totally different. They are written by different writers. You can put them together, all these three. So you see the Quran, the music in the Quran, and the way the Quran been written, and the way the Quran can be recited is totally different than the words of Muhammad. The old Arab poem, which was very central in their life, is totally different in its structure, in its rhythm, and in everything.
Nothing.
There is no similarity between the three.
Ahmad, nothing you're saying negates anything I said. You're making a completely entire different point. everything I said. Have you not seen in all your research? Have you not seen Quranic manuscripts that are different from the Quran that Muslims are reading today? Have you come across that or not?
No, not at all. Even the Iranian who are
so you
Shia,
are complete.
which I don't think. Even the Iranian who are Shia or the Shia, they still have the same Quran that I am at the Muslim Sunni read.
No. Even today, okay. So first of all, we can, if you go look at what the scholars are showing us, we can see different manuscripts throughout Islamic history. The Quran that you have today is not the same Quran that they had earlier. We have found manuscripts of the Quran that differs from the Quran that you're reading today. And even today, Ahmad, I'm sorry to tell you this. This might blow your mind. Even today, there are different Qurans in circulation with major changes, major differences between them. Right now,
if somebody come and write another book and he call it Quran, that's a different story.
No.
The Quran because the history, the way the Muslim transport or take the Quran from one generation to another generation, and the way they took the Hadith, which here the
we're not talking about the Hadith. I understand the difference between tafsir and Hadith and the Sirah, and I know these things. I know the difference between these things. Okay, but we're talking about the Quran. Do you know that even today there are different versions of the Quran that Muslims read? Like if I go in Egypt and North Africa and take a Quran from there, and then I go to Saudi Arabia and take a Quran from there, and then compare them. Do you know that there are differences between the verses? Are you aware of this?
No, but this is not a difference in the verses. It is a difference in the way they read it, which is the what we call it. Tilawah.
That is wrong.
There is like warsh.
No, you're wrong.
Different tilawah.
No. If the warsh and hafs, if you look at the differences, they're actually different meanings. They're different. It's not just the way you read it. There are entire letters that are different. That changes the meaning. There are commands by God, commandments by God that are completely different based on whether you're reading the Hafs Quran or the Warsh Quran.
Well, I have an app on my phone. I can listen to all this reading, and I don't.
Okay.
Go. I don't know. I mean, what you're talking to me is totally is not true, and I know about that. I know about the.
Do you know the difference? Do you know the difference between Malik and Malik? Do you know? Like we could start with the first chapter. Like it goes every chapter.
Yeah,
like you could. Yeah. Okay. What's?
Yeah.
Okay. What's the difference between Malik and Malik?
Between Malik and Malik, and I know this is a difference in the recitation of the Quran, but this does not create a big difference between different copies of the Quran, and you know that.
Okay, but I know that. But once you got to Baqarah, once you get to Surah Baqarah, the commands of God even change. The commandments of God even change. But let's do with this first chapter, the subtle one, so you understand that the meaning of Malik and Malik is different. Do you agree with that?
Malik and the Malik, yes, Malik is different than Malik. Yes.
Okay, so. And you understand?
Could we get an explanation for the audience?
Okay, so we have right now in circulation, we have Qurans that says Maliki Yawmiddin, and we have certain Qurans in circulation that says Maliki Yawmiddin, right? Which one of them means like you're a king of the final day, and the other one says like you're the owner of the final day. And so Muslims for a long time claim that the Quran has never changed and it always been the same word. And this is they introduce this as a miracle, that not a single dot, not a single vowel, nothing in the Quran has changed from the time of the revelation of Muhammad. And this was introduced to us as one of the main proofs that Islam is real, because Allah has managed to keep the Quran completely consistent and the same. But that is being invalidated, because even today, if you go find different Qurans, even today that Muslims are using in entire countries, you can see that there are differences between them, which completely disproves that miracle. So what Ahmad is trying to suggest is that the Quran was not changing throughout history. What I say that if you go look back, you could see, for example, if you look at the Sana manuscript, you could see actually in real time, like based by X-ray of different layers of the script, that you could see that there were an earlier text and then the above text that was completely changed. So you could actually, through archaeology and different methods, you could see the evolution of the Quran through history. This was not something that did not change. And even today we have different Qurans. That's the whole point of this argument.
Ahmad, what is your familiarity with what Armin is saying? Have you investigated this kind of X-ray technology? Have you investigated the differing? Well, what Armin is saying is different text, different textual, like actual text, as opposed to interpretation.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
What Armin said is based on he think that this studies is new. No, Muhammad said that I received the Quran on 7 letters. تلقيت القرآن نزل القرآن على 7 أحرف. This is the original 7 accent, 7 Arabic accent, and it was read. He was reading it to the people, to the different tribe with their accent.
Ahmad, don't be dishonest. You just said it's not different accents.
No.
The Malik and Malik are not different accents. These are different words.
No. Well, how did you ever heard about the hadith said نزل القرآن على 7 أحرف? You never heard?
Yes, but it's a misrepresentation of what we're saying. These are not just different. Yes, I've heard of that. Yeah, but these are not different accents. These are different words. Have you heard of the Sana manuscript? Have you heard of the Sana manuscript?
No. But I want to tell you. I want to tell you something about this Malik Yawmiddin. This example you give. I listened since I was a child in Egypt to a Quran reciter, and he said, because this is the first chapter in the Quran, Al-Fatiha, and it's very famous in all prayer, and he read it with both reading. He read it with both reading. He said, Malik Yawmiddin, Malik Yawmiddin. He repeated on the same recitation. This is something all the Muslims know. So it's you bring it up like
not all the Muslims
discovered something new. No, any Muslim who have knowledge.
No. That's a dishonest claim as well. Most Muslims are shocked. Most Muslims, when I show them,
I know this since I was 11 or 12 years old.
I know
all the examples.
Are you most Muslims, Ahmad? I say most Muslims. Are you representative of most Muslims, Ahmad?
I cannot claim that because this will be unfair,
Okay, yeah, exactly. So when I say most Muslims will be shocked, most Muslims today are shocked when they actually hear the fact that there are different versions of Islam. You go to say, I knew this since I was a child. That does not negate my claim.
Didn't you know? Because it seemed like you know very much about Islam. The hadith about the 7 ahruf, about the 7 letter of reading the Quran. Did you know that?
Yes, and I know many Muslim preachers and many Dawah boys represent that as an insignificant difference, and they say that these are just different qira'ats, these are different accents. Okay, they just sound different. Okay. But then I challenge them. I'm like, how is this different accents? These are completely different words. Now let me ask you something. Do you know that the verses inside the Dome of the Rock, the Quranic verses inside the Dome of the Rock, do not even match at all with the Quran? Like the differences between the verses in the Dome of the Rock, the Qubat al-Sakhra, is completely different from, not completely, it's very different from what you have in your book, the Quran. Did you know that?
No, I don't know that, and I don't think this is true.
Okay.
And I'm gonna
go look it up.
Yeah,
go look it up. And also go look up the Sana manuscript. It will blow your mind.
Yeah, the Dome of the Rock was built at the time of the Malik. Abdul Malik,
652.
About 200 years. Yeah, so if they wrote it,
exactly.
If I wrote the Quran on the wall of my house and I wrote it wrong, this doesn't mean that the Quran is different. The Quran is the same Quran. Yeah.
No, what the scholars are saying, what the actual scholars in this field, okay, go read what the scholars are saying. It shows that this was a work in progress. That by the time of Abdul Malik, okay, the Quran had not yet been finalized. Unlike when people think that Osman canonized the Quran, it hadn't been finished by the time of Osman. It was still a work in progress. You could see the evolution of Quran through time. Okay, sorry.
Ahmad, no. This is spectacular stuff. Ahmad, Ahmad, I appreciate you calling in. We actually kind of have to wrap the show up, but it sounds like Armin has given you some things to look into. You might want to focus on the Sana palimpsest
Manuscript.
and the Dome of the Rock and these other matters that he talked about. Maybe go back, watch this episode, pinpoint, zero in on that stuff. If you see Armin online on one of our shows, perhaps you might want to call right back in and try to nail him down on these issues. But we have to go, and I don't want it to end, and I am having a good time just sitting here and listening. These two passionate people debating stuff, but I think this would we would all benefit from a bit more focus, so we could cite to some sources, and then instead of saying I don't know, I like to hear yes, I'm aware of, and this is why that's wrong. But I do appreciate you calling. I'm going to drop you. I didn't want to cut you off, but I do have to wrap this up. We've got a bunch of yeah, I got to get through them. I've got to get through them. So we've got, let's see. I want to make sure I get started at the last one. Let's see. Oh my gosh, there's so many. Let's see. John Doan. Okay, folks and crew, don't touch this for a little. John Doan, $9.99, atheist punk here, and I'm loving how Johnny and Armin are just picking apart James's lack of proof of what he thinks is proof. The truth is simple and doesn't need a BS. I don't know what that says. Mamad, €2 and 2 peace signs. Jessica and Tony the Bird, and thank you, both of you. Jessica and Tony the Bird, new member, $10. Have you guys seen the Netflix show Surviving Death? Got into an argument with my dad about it since apparently I'm just too close-minded to believe people meet God during an NDE. Love the show, smiley face. Yeah, I'm not convinced about that. Armin, how do you feel about NDEs, near-death experiences? Do you think that they're evidence of God?
I validate those experiences. I know people have those experiences, but I don't think they prove God.
I hear you. I hear you. Patricia McGill, member of 2 years, $20. Thank you so much for that. I'm 64. This is what Patricia's saying, not me. From an early age, I never thought it was my duty to make babies and serve a family. I obviously kept feeling that way since I'm now a retired pilot, aircraft mechanic, and naval officer. Well, fantastic. I guess you have rejected the gender norms that were presented before you. They did not resonate with you, and that is your freedom for now. Let's see what else we got. Nomain 041, a member of 1 month. Thank you so much. That is 44 rupees, I am being told, Indian rupees. If that is true, thank you so much for the rupees. Happy Pride Month, rainbow. I got a transgender flag, I think, and a pride flag. Yes. Happy Pride Month to you too, Noman 041. We've got Newman, Asal NN, TRY. Those are Turkish lira. I've been to Turkey. That's a beautiful country and such history. You got 109.99 Turkish lira. The enemies of this is a quote. The enemies of intolerance cannot be tolerant or neutral without inviting their own suicide. Much love, Armin. That's nice. Isn't that nice? Yeah. And then I got a $25 from an anonymous source who says, Alice, who says, in appreciation for Armin and his knowledge, I have learned so much. Thank you all for being there. I'm going to give you a few seconds to add any additional ones in there. But while I do that, I'm going to say that we have merchandise. We always have merchandise. If you're interested, we want to tell you about it. Limited edition t-shirts. Question your beliefs, because truth has nothing to fear from inquiry. Visit tiny.cc/merchhca to get them now. And of course, as always, we would be remiss if we did not thank the crew who put this show together every single week And throughout the week, there they are. There's some of the crew. And there's a lot more people that are on crew than are hosts. And without any of those people, if one of them were to have not shown up, this would have been a miserable experience of just, well, it would have been me and Armin just talking to each other, probably on the phone. Let's see. If you happen to be in the Austin area on June 25th, 2023, then you're going to have to join us for the live broadcast of Talk Heathen and AXP. Talk Heathen is hosted by Objectively Dan and Jamie the Blind Limey. And AXP will be hosted by Christy Powell and Jimmy Jr. It's going to be a good one, both of those shows. Doors open at noon. We hope to see you there. I really hope that you'll come on down. And those of you who can, there is plenty of room. Come on down. It's so much fun to be in the studio with people. And there's all kinds of people in this community that aren't crew volunteers and who aren't hosts. They're just people who like to hang out and do other stuff. And we love those people too. I'm just going to ask, do we have time for another call, or do you want this to be the end of the show? I'm thinking we might have to end it, but yeah, that is it. Hey, we got some more stuff. I wanted to talk one last thing about the live stream. We've got this live stream. It's 24 hours a day. It's everything that AXP has ever put together in one live stream. Tune in at any time to see a constant stream of hosts. There's clips, specials from 26 seasons of AXP. You can listen to it as well. Go to tiny.cc/AXPTV to join the fun. And then, of course, we've got our question of the week. Share your experience. Reminder, remember what that was. Let me see. That question was, what is the best, aka worst, verse from any holy text? Go ahead and provide those in the comments, not in the live chat. We will not be reading those that come in the live chat. The live chat goes away after some time, after the show ends, actually. And it looks like we do have another super chat from I'm a Trader, $20. I am an ex-Catholic who married a Muslim. I love Armin's knowledge of the Quran. Please have more of Armin on the AXP. You like that? You like hearing that? Isn't it nice to get love? Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
It is very nice. Armin, I'm glad that we had this show. I can't wait if we get more Muslim callers to have you have those dialogues with them, because truly a lot of the same arguments. I know that there's textual stuff, there's archaeological evidence, there's different kinds of stuff that's going to be different from the other religions, but a lot of the arguments are kind of the same. A lot of them are the same. And so I would like to see your take on some more of those. Where else can we find you?
Oh, before I say where else you can find me, I just want to mention that I watched the Atheist Experience when I was still in Iran. And I can't believe I'm here on this show. This was for a lot of ex-Muslim atheists. The Atheist Experience was something that we grew up on because couldn't believe seeing people just openly talking about atheism. Like, who are these people? How are they so brave? Why are they letting them? Right. So, I mean, it was, and in a world where it was so lonely, this was such an amazing outlet to see like atheists being able to stand up for just like their lack of belief and just like telling people to come and challenge them. So, and then I could not imagine back then that one day I would be on this show. So I just wanted to mention what a big dream come true this is.
Well, that's great. That's great.
Okay. So with regards, go on.
No. I was going to say, where can we see you besides here? Thanks for that. Where else can we see you? And we're going to put up a graphic for you while you're talking.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, on Atheist Republic, we have. I tell people this: the Atheist Republic YouTube channel. You could fight me on this. Okay, it's the most international atheist YouTube channel. So what I mean by that is that our audience is extremely global. So, and our show is very global. So me and Susanna, we cover the news around religion from all around the world once every week. And the countries that we cover, sometimes it's Indonesia, sometimes it's Bangladesh, sometimes it's Iran, sometimes it's India, Egypt, Philippines, United States, Canada, Japan. It's all over the place. It's very global. So if anybody's interested in having a global perspective from an atheist point of view about what's happening, religion and secularism wide around the world, the Atheist Republic channel is really good. So I do that with Susanna, but I also do Q&As with Secularity here. Sometimes once every week, sometimes we miss them, but once every week, me and Secularity, we answer people. Well, actually, we switched that. We used to answer people's questions, but now we're reviewing Islamic videos, So we go to popular Muslim channels and we watch their videos and we just do some reactions on it. So we do that mostly for fun. But yeah, if you like we do that as well.
I like that.
Yeah.
YouTube's Secular Rarity is a beloved member of the ACA team, and we like to have him wherever we see him. And he's down there making cute faces. We see him often. Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to AXP this week. Thank you so much for Armin for joining me. And let's keep aware that there's a whole world of people who don't believe, and they need our support. So see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
What will it take for you to start opening your eyes, to start questioning the bullshit everyone around you buys? You think it's any of your business what goes on between my thighs? I wonder when we'll be rid of your lies.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.